Again, I'm Tony. Thanks, Steve. I'm Tony Newman again. I'm with the Division of Senior and Disability Services, coming to you from Anchorage today. And I'm here with several members of the Senior and Disability Services team, along with Andrew and Steve from HCBS Strategies. And this is our third and final webinar for stakeholders to provide input on the legislature's request to the Department of Health to develop a plan that would result in the elimination of the waitlist for intellectual and developmental disabilities waiver and to prevent other waitlists from being needed. On October 24th, we held our first meeting to introduce the legislature's request and the division's initial thoughts around an approach to meet that request. We had a good participation in that first webinar. On November 21st, we held a second webinar to share with you some of the estimates around costs and assumptions around enrollment and other details of the plan. Throughout all this time, we've been accepting comments and feedback. And I'd like to thank those of you who contributed either through the webinars or via written comments that you sent to the inbox that we set up. So today we have the draft plan before us, and it was attached to the SDS e-alert that went out on Thursday, December 8th. Time is short. We have less than 1 week now to deliver this report to the legislature by the due date of December 20th. But we wanted to put the plan out before our stakeholders again, now that we've pulled the information together and written it up. We've pulled all of that into a single document that went out with that e-alert. So as the slide says, this will be an opportunity to provide input and questions about the draft report. If you don't have a copy of that draft report, put your email address in the chat, and one of us will get it to you. We're going to use the chat for comments today and ask that people enter their questions into the Q&A that appears and on my screen. It appears along the bottom band of the Zoom platform. And if you would like to be unmuted and speak and have dialogue verbally, you can raise your hand icon and we'll be sure to see you. And you can go ahead and ask your question or make your comment directly. Other than that, we don't have much of a slideshow today. We have reminders here on how you can contribute your feedback through this platform. To mind, this is sort of like a public hearing that we will do when we have a regulations project go out. Even though this isn't a regulations project, we will hopefully not do a lot of talking ourselves, but we mostly want to hear what, if anything, those of you out there have to say. We can, Steve, I believe we can flash the draft report to bring it up on screen in case anyone wants to direct us to a specific page or paragraph. Yes. Or section. I'll say that with just a few days to turn this report around, we may not be able to incorporate everything people would like to change about the report. But if we do hear something and we agree it would be valuable to work in, we certainly will try and do so. Steve and Andrew and the division have a plan to meet post this meeting where we will take the feedback we receive and see how we can best work with it. So one other thing I want to emphasize before I be quiet is what I've tried to emphasize before is that this is only a plan. It's only intended to meet the legislature's request that we give them a plan for how we would eradicate the IDD waitlist if we had the resources to do so. It's not a commitment on the administration's part or the legislature's part to actually put this plan into place. It's just to present them with the ideas on how we could go about doing it. So with that, I will say one more thing, and that's just to thank Steve and Andrew at HCBS Strategies for their work with us, their patience with us. We met frequently over the past few months. And they, took our ideas, edits, perspectives. In some cases, they dealt with our courteous, hopefully, respectful arguments. And I wanted to thank by name the individuals here at SDS who really lifted a lot of weight with this in addition to their ongoing duties. Heather Cord, Pam Kellish, Lynn Kyleman-Cruz, Caroline Hogan, and Jetta Whitaker. And also I wanted to say thank you to the Mental Health Trust for stepping up and helping us to support the development of this project through financial support. All right, well, like I said, this is mostly going to be an opportunity from here for those of you out there to speak and share your thoughts. So I will pause and look for any questions or chat comments or raised hands. Does anybody else on the SDS team or HCBS strategies want to add anything before we open it up? Okay. And Steve, I see Kim Champney has weighed in with a comment. I can read it out loud in the Q&A. On page 12, the work plan includes developing 3 pieces of infrastructure. I think these are the 3 things. 1, the algorithm. 2, the exception process. And 3, the process for uneven expenditures. Can you explain those further? Would you work with a consultant on these who has done this in other states? Steve, could you by any chance put the plan up so that we can look at Kim's comment together?
Sure. Talking page 12.
And Kim, while Steve's doing that, and maybe you can respond by coming off mute. I'm just wondering, are you suggesting that when you ask them explain these further, that they could use more explanation in the plan? And I'm pausing in case, Kim, you're writing your response or trying to figure out how to come off mute. Steve or Andrew, do you know how we can, do we need to sort of permit Kim to unmute?
Actually, Kim, if you can raise your hand, you'll jump to the top and I can then unmute you there. Okay, you should be able to talk now. If you go ahead.
That's probably, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably just easier than me trying to type. I just thought that particular section, it said, it starts out, I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but it says something like 3 pieces of infrastructure. And then two were numbered, but I assume the third one was the algorithm. But one of the concerns that's come up is around the fact that, and you pointed out in the report, that an algorithm is not going to capture an individual need clearly in every situation, and that it's really important to develop an exception process and also this third thing that's like, sounds like if there's an intermittent or emergency need, that there's a way to address that. And then the question of like, we've struggled in Alaska with exceptions to caps, like the JHAB cap or the acuity. It's hard to have a clear exception. And I just wondered, I know other states have this process, and I wondered, you know, would this be something you would be looking at, you know, somebody who's worked with another state to do this? Have you talked about how you would address this, or at this point it's kind of just a proposed thought, and you would want to just gather input and try to make it clear? So anyway, I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and Tony, before you answer, just one clarification on the report. The first thing is the algorithm. Point number 1 within here is the second component. That's the exception process. And then point number 2 here talks about some of the risk pooling mechanisms and the other components that can be developed.
Okay, we can't see the report, just in case we thought we could, but
Oh, I thought that I'm sharing
that
that.
makes sense though.
No, not yet.
Nope.
I can see it.
Huh.
It should be shared, yeah.
Yeah, we see the
can't see
slide
it.
format for the webinar.
Good.
Yeah, I'm still seeing the presentation.
That's what mine shows.
Okay, let me reshare then.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And now are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, this is the algorithm is described just in the body, and point 1 refers to the exception process, and point 2 refers to the approach for risk pooling.
And Kim, we in response to a part of your question, we did plan, and we worked into cost assumptions that we would work with a consultant who would help us with some of this infrastructure work. So yes, we would, and hopefully with someone who does have experience with this sort of work in other states. But maybe what's partly confusing, Steve, is that we do say we're developing 3 pieces of infrastructure, so that might lead to one to think that there's a 1, 2, 3 that follows, and there's just 1 and 2. So anyway, maybe that's something we could look at.
Okay, and there's a few people with their hands raised and another comment.
Why don't we, if I don't see who's got their hand raised, so
There's Michelle Geralt. I can unmute her.
okay. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Tony. I don't have a lot of, specifics, because I know the timing is such that the plan is going to move forward, but I just did want to express appreciation for adding the desire for, flexibility. And I think that, what this plan does and what we're going to plan to do to continue to support you to make this an active, doable plan, understanding it's not a promise, but it's a plan, that there are some clear things that need to be done in order to eradicate a wait list, to have a state where people can access services. And there are a number of things that need to happen. Obviously, the rate restructuring process is not a big part of this plan, but it's something that's in process, and we will be continuing to advocate for that. The flexibility in our waiver plan that we submit that allows people to have more self-directed services, obviously. So I think I appreciate the components of the plan that indicate that, the understanding that the plan addresses the fact you don't know what you don't know. You don't really know who's out there that might come forward. But there is a need to address our systems, and I think you've put that in place. I think the other thing we just are cautionary about, and not that you're going to radically change the plan, but an allocation tool, we don't want that to become a barrier where we spin on that for years and years and years. If what we're doing now gives us an impetus to move forward, great, and we can work on something in the future, but we don't want to have the allocation tool be like nothing's going to happen until we get a new allocation tool, because we don't want to wait another 4, 5, 6 years to have that be in place. And sometimes those technology barriers can put plans aside. So those are just a couple of the comments, but just again, an appreciation that you all have spent time to put this in play, because it just opens up the conversation and gives us all a pretty good to-do list to move things forward to improve services to our stakeholders across Alaska. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Michael Bailey was next.
Oh, thank you. Hi, it's Michael. Can you hear me all right?
Hi, Michael.
Good, good. So again, just reiterating Michelle's appreciation, this is a start, and want to just, say this respectfully, that it captures a lot of the discussions that have gone on over the last couple of decades, really. You know this, that, the NRI is not a new concept. I think we were talking about that 10 years ago. And so to what Michelle just, the best laid plans can be put out, but I think there's also a need to have some sort of contingency plan for a resource allocation tool. And while we agree that the ICAP is not ideal, how do we factor in that if it's another 10 years out before NRI really gets in place, then what is the alternative? So I think just building some alternative in there as if it gets into bumps that it can't really be implemented in NRI, because clearly the need is for some sort of resource allocation tool. The other thing that I would suggest on the fiscal impact and trying to assess that, because our current system is a crisis draw only, so when you score highly and you're most in crisis, that's where you get the draws, to really consider, do you do a 75% off the top, 25% off the bottom? Because if you look at the lower scores and get them launched, you may actually prevent a lot of higher costs down the road. We all know that. So rather than only off the top only, can we, I think there was years and years ago, a system where you took some off the top, some out of the middle, and some at the lower end. So you spread it across, and then the mechanism should also be reflective of region, demographic, and the acuity need. And I think that'll help distribute costs. So, but a good start, and thanks for this opportunity to provide some input.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate having Hope here. Well represented. Just a comment to that. I've had a couple people suggest to me that maybe there could be an increased draw. Maybe there could be a tiering of draws. So something like you're describing, Michael, and wondering why that was not a part of the plan. Because the request was to eliminate the wait list, not to make it smaller. And I think that's what we really focused on. I am looking forward to, the thing I'm most excited about is the discussion that this will invite. I don't know if the legislature has any intention of even opening the report. I don't know that the administration has any intention of supporting the report at this point. I know though that it should invite some more dialogue about our system and where improvements are needed. So I at the very least, I'm excited about that, about the prospect of conversations about what are alternatives to this plan, that if not eliminate the wait list, can at least help with some improvements for our system. So just wanted to sort of lay that out in response to your comments, Michael and Michelle. So thanks again for being here.
Great. Tyler McNeil was next.
All right, thank you. I guess just echoing a lot of what has been said in regards to appreciation, I think of several individuals who live here in our community in Ketchikan that have been on the wait list for years and years and years, and who we could serve, we have capacity to serve, we want to help them and their families. But because they haven't been able to be drawn for a waiver, we haven't been able to do so in the ways that we'd like to. So I'm really hopeful for those individuals that we would love to be able to support. I had kind of a hypothetical question that I was wondering how the plan would respond. I guess a concern that comes to mind is regarding people's existing levels of support. And if we use this algorithm and they score lower or with a lower budget than what their current support needs are, how that would impact people, if there'd be kind of a grandfathering in process, or, you know, an example would be maybe somebody has a support plan that has a currently an approved $150,000 per year to support them maybe in a group home setting, and the algorithm allots $100,000 to their support needs and can't cover the group home. What happens in those types of hypothetical situations? I would just be concerned about people not getting the supports they need or are accustomed to because of an algorithm. So.
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for that comment. That's something that we recognize that's going to be of a lot of interest to people and concern. And we are going to do it. I mean, again, if we are directed to move forward on the plan, we would caring for individuals who would be in that situation where it would be an important part of our conversation. I can't say at this point what exactly that would look like and how much such protection would be afforded. But I know that I'll ask the staff that have been here for longer than I have about this, because we've had some experience looking at the INRI and comparing it with our existing assessment processes. And I think that was really instructive to us in recognizing that was going to be something we'd have to care for. I don't know if Lynn or Caroline in particular can speak to that experience.
Yeah, this is Lynn. I definitely understand the concern and think that we do have a little bit of experience with that. And unfortunately, we didn't go through with, you know, some of the actions that we had taken because of, I think we've talked about that, because of COVID and because of other initiatives that we had to take. But when you're setting the algorithm, we would use a contractor. I can't imagine that we would try to do that internally. And you do look at the existing folks as it pertains to the whole population that you're trying to serve. And so we would look at those individuals that have a plan of 150,000. We'd look at what level they tend to qualify at. And then you sort of work out the population from that to determine how you will have folks fall into bands. And I think the whole purpose obviously is we don't want to short people and we don't want to harm people. But we want to make a fair system. So we would do that with a lot of input, I would imagine, from a contractor vendor, looking at the data. It wouldn't be done in a vacuum. We'd have to be pretty transparent about that. And, you know, one of the things that comes to mind is when we were working on trying to set an acuity, we weren't able to move forward with that either. But a lot of people came and said, oh, you know, we serve these really difficult to serve people and they would be a level 4. We set these 4 different tiers as we were looking at the NFLOC assessments. And I'm just thinking of that project because in the end, the providers that were at the table recognized, oh, wait, I guess they're not really a level 4 based on this criteria, but we applied that across the whole population. And they were able to sort of weed through and look at how those people fit into those tiers and agree with us that we were trying to be very thoughtful about how we did that. I think that's how we will proceed moving forward, being very, very thoughtful of the entire population. I hope that helps alleviate some of your concern, Tyler. I don't think we have all the answers right now in this plan. It's just a plan, but when we actually get into implementing, there'll be a lot more detail that comes out.
Thanks, Lynn.
Okay. Ready to go into the next person?
Sure.
Okay, Christine? And Christine, you should be able to talk.
Steve, I wonder if, because we can't hear Christine, if her comments would have been, would have tied back to what I see if it's the same Christine, in the Q&A, which I'm happy to read those, if that would be helpful. Christine, are you able to talk? Certainly don't want to speak for you. But I do see the comment made in the Q&A. In the past, SDS made statements or promises about criteria that haven't been honored. What makes this time different? Specific examples are day hab caps, hourly respite, and/or acuity. Concern about putting individuals into boxes or caps of services will create hardships for people on existing waivers and require care coordinators to go to more fair hearings. And another comment, won't these changes require a complete overhaul of forms again? And I sense your anxiety, Christine, about the changes and how disruptive they could be to our recipients. It would be one of the most significant system changes that this division had been through if we were asked to develop this new technique. But certainly the intention would be more people better off and more people able to exert more control over the services they receive is the long range plan for this approach. So in the end, that is the desire, is that people find that there's less hardship, not more. But that's not to say that it wouldn't be a challenge to get it underway. We are all here at SDS very much aware of how formidable a task this would be if it were asked of us to make come true.
Okay, Michael, I still see your hands up. Did you have another question or input? No, he lowered his hand.
Sorry, I failed to lower it earlier.
Okay, no
Thanks.
worries. Okay, Thomas.
I see you see the question in the chat, or has Thomas raised his hand?
And he also raised his hand, so I've just unmuted him. So Thomas, looks like you're muted on your side, so if you could unmute yourself.
Okay, I see that now. Great.
Great.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you're thinking about the quartiles. I've mentioned this for years, that my understanding was the DDRR was meant as a screening tool for one of those 4 quartiles, the crisis group. It's been used now to sort out everyone, and that seems to me mismanagement of the wait list. But here nor there, maybe we can move forward and do something for people that don't want or need all the level of services that some require, i.e. the crisis people in full-blown crisis need. There's people like Jenna that deserve a meaningful life. There's people like myself and my family that have lost millions of dollars in earned income helping Jenna because I'm the one that's providing what she gets. And that doesn't quite seem fair after so many years. What does she have to do to get a meaningful life? I mean, I don't know how much longer I have that health and well-being to provide for her alone. And she doesn't require much. It's just a few things. Some states are looking at providing specific waivers for specific needs that people need to get a meaningful life, i.e. transportation or a real job. That's not asking a lot. Jenna doesn't want DSPs and full services. She wants what she needs to have a meaningful life. And she's still waiting for anything. so she gets nothing while others use all the services and funding. It doesn't quite seem fair to me or many others, but I do appreciate what you're trying to do. But how much longer does Jenna and others have to wait? Thank you.
Thomas, thank you. Thank you for that comment. You know, one of the things that I think the report sacrifices, it has to, because they asked us for something very specific, but there's a lot of numbers and dollar figures in this report, but we're talking about real people here. And that's one thing I hope that we, all of you, are able to convey if the legislature gives this report an audience in the coming session, is that this is about real people who are being impacted by the way the system works now and would be impacted if we change it. So I hope that you will be part of the dialogue going forward.
Okay.
All right,
Tom?
well, it looks like we've gotten a couple more people have joined since we kicked off the webinar. So I'll just repeat for those that have joined since we got going. This is an opportunity to give us some feedback on the draft plan that was sent out with an e-alert on December, let me see my notes here, 8th. And if you don't have a copy of the report, you could put your email address in the chat, and one of us will figure out how to get it to you. But again, largely an opportunity to hear from you and your feedback on the report. We mostly just want to listen at this point. The report is due to the legislature in less than a week, so this is just one more opportunity to give us your feedback before we make our final edits and turn the report in. So with that, eager to hear your questions or comments, either in the chat, questions in the Q&A, or raise your hand so Steve will see it and unmute you for us.
Okay, and Tom, I've unmuted you. If you're on, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Tony, good to see you again. Question for you. You had mentioned, who knows what the state's actually going to do with this report, what's going to be implemented, if anything. I wondered what the appetite is for some of the flexibility that's mentioned here. Specifically, if you look at the bottom of page 12, it talks about how other states allow people to pool a portion of hours, or even allow entities to pool extra funds that can be used to fill in gaps. Even if this plan isn't implemented, what do you think the possibilities are of some of the flexibility to roll out?
You know, I guess at this point we'd have to see what the legislature and the administration want us to focus on. I can tell you that there's no end to the list of improvements that we here at SDS would like to make to our system. Some of them are things within our own sphere of control. Some of them are within the department's sphere of control, and then even beyond that to the administration. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question very well at this point. But I can tell you that we at SDS are going to be trying to do some planning for how we will proceed over the next 4 years to try and make the system improvements that are within our sphere of control. And I am just so happy to be surrounded by a group of very energetic leaders and managers here at SDS who never settle for things being the way they are if they're not as good as they can be. So I'm hopeful that we will find other ways to find system improvements as we can, whether or not they are attached to this plan. And Tom, I'm not sure if that's your question. You're Somebody in the Q&A posted a question about whether an active legislation is required. It's sort of related to the question you just asked verbally. But to answer your question, yes, an active legislation would be required to move forward, because not only because statute would need to be changed, the DD registry is mentioned in statute as the way that the waiver will be managed. So not only would that need to change, but obviously this plan has a price tag attached to it, and that would need to land in a budget bill as well. So sort of two tracks of legislation would have to be developed for the plan to move forward.
Great. Kim has her hand raised again.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Two more comments. One is I do think that legislators will be hearing from advocates about this plan. And I know legislators have been hearing from advocates about the lack of staff availability or service access and capacity issues. And one of my input I wanted to share is I wondered if you could make more of a commitment around the service flexibilities. So you have some great quotes in here about, you know, the movie theater is full and there's no seats, and we're going to be continuing to sell tickets. And there was another one about a mom with a child with very complex needs, saying, why would somebody, you know, serve or concern about somebody serving her daughter with very complex needs when there are people with less complex needs and it's the same reimbursement rates. And my thinking was, and you address it, you have a section that says exploring changes to services to increase flexibility. And there's a sentence in there that says, ideally, the increased flexibility will occur shortly after the resource allocation tool is implemented. And I just wondered about having a more committed stance around the next time the state waiver plan is submitted, that there would be some additional flexibilities and there would be work with stakeholders instead of like exploring or we'll, you know, gather input. There are some things that it seems like that might be something that could be strengthened, because legislators will hear, wow, there's not enough service providers now, and this plan is going to double the number of people receiving services. So you don't need to respond to that. That was just a comment. And then my other comment I wanted to share is, it does seem like, and Michael Bailey mentioned it, that we've been talking about the NRI for, gosh, probably 10 years now. And when you read the plan, you wouldn't know how the department feels about moving forward in like resource allocation, or if this is the right thing to do. And maybe that is outside of this plan. But there's a section, when I look at the table of contents, there's a section that says the challenges to eliminating the wait list, but there's not a section that says the opportunities to eliminating the wait list. Like somebody else pointed this out to me, and when I read with that in mind of kind of the overall focus, it is pretty balanced towards this is going to be very difficult and there are a lot of challenges, and it's mentioned, but not really saying, wow, the state SDS has really embraced the shared vision, because I know you have, and saying this resource allocation piece is a really moves us forward in that way, and the opportunity to provide flexible services really feels, is the next right step, we think. And I just wanted to also, you don't necessarily have to respond to that, Tony, but just wanted to point that out, that something to consider. Thank you.
Kim, thank you. I want to ask for a little clarification, if I may. It sounds like you'd mentioned workforce issues, and it sounds like the kind of flexibility or one of the kind of flexibility that you would like to see emphasized is sort of more alternatives to trying to just meet the workforce need as we've always done in the past, like for instance through more innovative use of technology. Am I extending your thought too far, or is that kind of what you had in mind?
Well, I was thinking, there are flexibilities we've talked about, for instance, permanently being able to pay legally responsible family members to provide services like that has happened during APK, especially in rural Alaska, or technology or companion services. Like there are some of those things people have talked about. And I wonder if there could be more of a commitment of the next, the state. If this work plan moved forward, part of the work plan would be preparing for those flexibilities to be included in the next state waiver plan that will need to go in. I think we're 4 years out from that. So it's a little ways off, but it's kind of a stronger commitment to flexibilities instead of currently the plan. It talks about exploring flexibilities, but I didn't have a specific flexibility in mind. It was more, my point was a stronger commitment to, along with resource allocation, yes, we will definitely need to add flexibilities and to expand capacity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I mean, you're pointing out one of the probably the biggest challenge with this plan is kind of as you and I have talked about. I know, where do you stop? Where how much do we put into the plan when we're certainly a bunch of dreamers here and would love to talk about everything that we would love to see to improve the system, but we kind of had to draw the line, I'm afraid, hewing pretty close to the what does it take so that in 2028 there's no longer a wait list. But for sure, we do intend to work with stakeholders as we go along and try and make system improvements. And as we explore any flexibilities, whether they're part of this plan or not, engaging with you as we go.
We've got a couple of other comments and questions in the Q&A.
Okay, I see a comment. Agreed. The whole motive of the plan is to make sure that everyone eligible has access to the services that they need. That point should be celebrated in the plan in some fashion. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, like noted earlier, it's a plan that has a lot of numbers in it, and the benefit of the plan, of course, the primary benefit is not whether it costs less than we expect or more than we expect. It's going to be that thousands of people that are not getting served right now hopefully would be. Group supported living is one way to maximize workforce. I see, Michelle, your comment. I think we may have tried to work in mention of that as an example in the very end of the report. Actually, on page 18, I see that we talked about the availability of potential new services, and that was one of them that was mentioned. And hi, Jacqueline, I see your comment. I think there needs to be clear definition, direction as to where responsibilities will be if the NRI moves forward. Where are things landing on the ADRCs and the DDRCs, SDS, DPA, care coordinators? I think we need to learn our lessons from when Harmony came forward. Care coordinators were assured where the workload would land, and then it ended up being completely different, and our expected work duties substantially increased. To me, a tiered system screams that we are no longer being person-centered. You can't say Billy, Bob, and Joe have the same needs based on a score. Historically, soft caps have become hard caps, and further restricting our vulnerable population is not right. Thank you for the comment, Jacqueline. I want to make sure everybody on the SDS team, anybody on the SDS team, feels free to hop in. I know that as Michael mentioned, the NRI has been kicking around for a long time here, and there's been a lot of close work done on trying to bring it into the system, and the positives and the minuses about that have been carefully considered. So just want to offer that out. Those of you that have looked at that system change for some time, I know have cared about that it means good things for our recipients, not leaves them in a worse off place.
There's two new questions, comments.
Yeah, I see Michael's follow-up comment, challenges on page 8. Challenges with provider capacity, especially for individuals who are more complex to serve, reiterates the argument for a tiered draw system. Often the more complex to serve increase staff burnout, so a crisis draw system works against recruitment and retention of DSPs. Balance for DSPs would include drawing people with the less intense needs. The plan can offer a solution to some current barriers in retaining workforce while reducing wait time for recipients. Great comment, Michael. Thank you. And Henry, I see your comment. Thanks, SDS, for your diligent effort to get broad stakeholder engagement on this wonderful opportunity. I'm sorry, some of the negative baggage. Looking forward, not backwards. Thank you for that comment. Okay, I see we have about 13 minutes remaining. This is your opportunity to give us your feedback before we go back to the workshop with the report and consider these comments today. Thank you. Thank you all. I see Sandra's comment. Tony, you mentioned eradication by 2028. This is 5 years from now, which isn't realistic since the legislature would need to appropriate funds. Is there a section of the plan that describes the upfront work that would need to be completed before the 5-year clock would start? Oh, that's a really interesting comment, Sandra. Yeah, the plan asked for a plan on how we would eradicate the wait lists in 5 years. And we have laid out in the appendix a pretty detailed work plan about what would need to begin right from the date that the authorizing legislation is signed. I appreciate Steve's help in putting not only potential start dates, which begin the very day the legislation is signed, which we imagined here is May 1st. Of next year, but the approximate duration of time each would take. So we could adjust the plan as conversations ensue in the legislature and they're asked, and we are asked, I mean, are you ready to go really from day one? That was our intention when building the plan, but we haven't spelled out a section where we describe what would really need to take place to position us, say, for a May 1st start date. Steve, do you have any thoughts on that comment that you'd like to add?
No, we've just thought about like once the legislation was authorized and that the money was allocated, that all the work that would need to be done. SDS has been looking at a lot of the other issues like adopting the NRI and resource allocation before, so there is a lot of work that could be built upon.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, Steve. This is Lynn, that we do have some existing things we can leverage. But to Sandra's point, and I have said this before in previous webinars, 5 years goes by in a blink for a big project like this. And so we do recognize that and realize that's a very lofty goal. Like Tony said, we're dreamers. We have been asking for this or, thinking about this for a really long time ourselves, just internally thinking about it. So appreciate your comments and understand that we do recognize that as a lofty plan, but we got to start somewhere. And I think it's a good overview of kind of what we need to do. There'll be a lot more detail that would be needed going forward, but we do have things we can leverage. prior existing work.
Thank you, Lynn. You know, one thing I'll say, the comment's been made, boy, you've been looking at the InterEye for a decade. Bear in mind that in the middle of that planning time, the pandemic landed, which really redirected the staff of SDS to have to respond to that, developing the Appendix K flexibilities, the other flexibilities, helping the other divisions in the department deal with guidance for congregate settings and nursing homes. That really took a full, I guess we're coming up on 3 years now out of that 10-year mix. So when I began with SDS in 2020, it was clear the team here was really on the verge and excited about getting some support and really taking some real concrete steps toward resource allocation. And then, of course, the pandemic interrupted all of us. But as the pandemic continues to recede, hopefully, I know there's as much respiratory infection as ever. But as we look forward to hopefully the public health emergency ending sometime in the new year, we'll be able to return to that work. And I think that's going to proceed in some fashion, no matter what happens with this plan. Michelle, I appreciate your inspiration from John F. Kennedy. We choose to end the wait list in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Paraphrasing John F. Kennedy there.
Okay. Thomas has raised his hand. So Thomas, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, again, I just want to reiterate what Michael's been saying a couple of times, and we can serve so many more people effectively if we reconsider how we're drawing people. And not everybody has to be in crisis. And the lower need people that could receive meaningful lives with so many less services and less expensive could reduce the wait list considerably. And I don't know if it is realistic to eliminate it completely in 5 years. I get that, but we could reduce it significantly if we just drew differently. People have been saying this for years. And the first step is to just get rid of that medically based negative punitive DDRR and look at a decent model of selecting. We've put it before the Governor's Council to redo that. And it's not something that can be done with wordsmithing. It's not valid. It's not reliable. It's a terrible instrument. I couldn't tell you the pain that it imposes on families. You just can't imagine what that does to families every other year having to go through that. I mean, Jenna was raised in a positive behavioral model. And the first year we did that, we scored a 5 because we don't know how to talk like that. And Jenna cries for 3 days and asks me why I said things like that about her. It's just a terrible instrument. And clinically, it's a lousy instrument. People should work at trying to come up with a better way to draw than that thing. Anyway, thank you.
Good job.
Thanks for your comments, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got 5 more minutes. Anyone else?
There's a question from Kim.
Can you email in comments today after this meeting? Of course you can, Kim. We can't, I can't though say with any certainty that we are going to be able to make any actionable change on the report. As with every passing hour, we get closer to Tuesday, December 20th. You know, the department leadership wants to have a chance to review the final report. And of course, the folks in the governor's office will want to be fully aware of what they are overseeing being transmitted to the legislature. So we are going to be meeting first thing tomorrow morning here to review comments such as we've received today. And we will be taking one last bit of work probably through the weekend so that by Monday we can deliver the report to our higher ups and get the report to the legislature before midnight on the 20th. So sure, we'll take any more feedback from here, but please recognize that the hour is getting late. Thank you for mentioning Steve Lesko, Michael. I never got a chance to meet him personally, but I've certainly watched Steve do his work in the legislature and in the halls, and he remains very inspiring to me as a leader in our world. So I thank you bringing him to mind, and like to think that that he would be pleased with this work. All right, Steve, thank you for flashing the email address one more time for folks, idd@hcbs.info, if you want to send some comments in writing. And thanks everybody for being here today. Especially those of you who've made time now 3 times with us as we've worked on this. I want to thank again the staff at SDS for adding this to their already full plates because it matters to you. And the staff here at SDS always endeavored to do the very best job they can. We were challenged here by the tight deadline and the enormity of the task, but people did their best to rise to it and get a report together that we're willing to stand behind. So with that, I will pause if there's anybody else who wants to add anything, and otherwise and begin to wrap things up. All right, Steve, thanks for your help with the slides. And for organizing the webinar and all the other webinars as well. Andrew, thanks for your help with the report. Lynn, Caroline, Heather, Pam, Jetta, anybody else from SDS on the call, thanks for your help getting us here today. And we'll look forward to continuing conversation on this in the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. And happy holidays otherwise.